spending too much time in conference rooms and staring at your computer and not knowing what's actually happening out there with the people consuming your products and services is a guaranteed way to get you away from truth in advertising.
Welcome to What Gets Measured, a Ninja Cat podcast about marketing, performance management, metrics, and effectiveness. Because what gets measured gets managed. I'm your host, Jake Sanders. Tom Rossolt is a consultant with decades of experience at every level of marketing, providing world-class advice and insights on ad claim substantiation, analytics, research, and training. He's been a statistics instructor, an analyst, a senior research statistician at SC Johnson, a VP, and he's here today to talk about truth in advertising. Tom, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Jake.
Well, I'm happy you showed up. This was fascinating to get this together. I found you on LinkedIn, and I was like, this guy needs to be on the show. Because truth in advertising, I'm just like, are we in an oxymoronic state or what's happening?
Right, exactly. There are people who refer to it as an oxymoron, in fact.
Well, no, it's actually amazing that you focus in on this. And so this first question is, like, we are marketers. We're ostensibly in the business of being generous with our definitions of untruths. Why does truth in advertising matter?
This is like a hot button issue for me, so I have lots I could say about it, but I'm going to restrict my response to the top 4 reasons why truth in advertising matters.
Perfect.
Number 1, human nature. The most obvious reason is that nobody likes to be lied to.
Mm-hmm.
It's human nature to lie, but hate being lied to. And if that's not a conundrum, I don't know what is. But yeah, we hate being lied to. So that's the number 1 reason truth in advertising matters. Number 2, federal legislation. Do yourself a favor after our conversation. Do an internet search for Lanham Act Section 43A, and Lanham is spelled Lanham. To summarize, false advertising is a federal civil offense, meaning that an advertiser can be subject to civil penalties if they are found to have made false or misleading advertising statements.
Wow.
If we have time later, I can explain to you how advertising speech is actually regulated in the US, and it might surprise you. But bottom line, there's federal legislation that says you can't lie in your advertising.
Wow.
Period. Yeah. So that's pretty powerful if you ask me. So it's not a criminal offense. It's a civil offense, but that still matters in my world anyway.
Yes.
Reason number 3, fair competition. Truth in advertising levels the playing field among competitors. Sometimes advertisers tell me they want to be more, quote unquote, aggressive with their ad claims in order to compete better. And I tell them, without a hint of irony, that if you want better results, do develop better products or services, but do not sacrifice the truth standard.
Wow.
Because that's the lazy way to get there. And 4th, and perhaps most importantly, for people who are working in advertising and marketing in some enterprise, it works. And I'll tell you the quick story. 2 very smart people, Sue Unerman and Jonathan Salem Baskin, published a book in 2012 titled Tell the Truth. Honesty is your most powerful marketing tool. And I heard Mr. Baskin speak at a conference, and I asked him for a pithy quote that I could use when I speak on truth in advertising. And he offered this summary of the findings in the book. And this is really important in my world. Companies that communicate the truths of functionality and experience tend to build better, more enduring, and more profitable brands. Boom, right? Truth for the win.
Well, it just seems like, there's so much there to unpack. I mean,
right. Yeah, I get it. But bottom line is, it's not always true. And I'm a statistician, so I acknowledge there are a range of outcomes. But truth is a better marketing campaign than anything else if you want to build an enduring brand.
Man, I love that. And if you talk to the real heads out there, they understand this. They get the fact a lot of creative people at advertising agencies really want to find real things to base their creative ideas off of. I want to know what the consumer is feeling in the purchase process, in the decision making, phase, like the research. I want to know what they actually do so I can put that in the copy or the content or the promise or the angle of approach, because it is coming from a qualitative place of realness. And you
Yes.
don't have to make it up. You just have to talk to your customers. I was at a marketing conference, and I asked an audience of 100-something marketers who raise your hand if you've talked on the phone to one of your customers, in the last 2 or 3 months. And 3 people raised their hands. Everyone should have raised their hands. And it's a phone conversation, friends. I'm not talking about a Survey Monkey or some Google survey. You're like, on a scale of 1 to 7, how many 7s do you think we're worth? And you're like, 7, and then you take all the 7s back and you're like, we're getting a lot of 7s. Be like, 7's pretty good. On a scale of 1 to what? And you're like, well, it doesn't really matter because we can make the scale up right now. We're 7s, bro. Like, go hard. And so it's like conversation is the number one place to get that stuff. Would you say, like, where could you find the truth?
Well, you are exactly right. And spending too much time in conference rooms and staring at your computer and not knowing what's actually happening out there with the people consuming your products and services is a guaranteed way to get you away from truth in advertising. Because then it's this weird academic thing that you were just describing. We're like, hey, we got a 7 on 8 attributes on the study. Maybe we can make claims about those. And they're just completely detached from reality.
Right.
So, but here's the thing. Advertising has always had a tricky relationship with the truth since time immemorial. And I think it's true for 3 reasons: laziness, greed, and short-term thinking. Things that we have all fallen victim to at one time or another. So, I'll put myself in that pile as well.
Oh, sure.
I think it's safe to say that re-engineering human frailty is well beyond our purview, right? Because we're not going to fight that. So
you mean my product isn't going to make people feel empowered and next lev their next gen to 2.0 and no?
Right, yeah. So, but human nature aside, in terms of, advertiser tendency to, let's say, stretch the truth, what concerns me most about advertising, as well as a great many things, and this has an impact on truth in advertising, is the expansion over time in our ability to communicate with one another, from scribbling on cave walls to the oral tradition, to the scribe, to movable type, to photography, to video, to the internet, to social media, to AI, to whatever comes next. There are an increasing number of opportunities and incentives to misbehave. So you want to get truth back into advertising, you're swimming upstream, because the value of lying is becoming ever greater.
So I mean,
and that's my biggest concern about truth in advertising, is that we are the current is flowing faster and we're swimming upstream.
Wow. And so, this next question was, just like what I was saying, real marketers know that telling the honest truth in a compelling way is the actual work of advertising. But a fair amount of consumers and practitioners think the opposite. There's some trust survey where, like, trust by professions, and advertising is second to the bottom. Like, mechanics are higher than us,
Right. Yes.
So, which is like, historically, the mechanics were the ones. And then they're like, people don't think advertising is a truthful place. A lot of people inside advertising feel that and bring that to their profession. We puff, bluff, and guff our way to the top. And so you outlined the reasons why the value of lying is becoming higher than the value of telling the truth. I mean, when do you think we departed from this? I mean, it isn't just a social media to blame. I mean, do you think is there a part in the history where we can locate where we just started to be like, let's just lie?
Well, I'm not going to put my politics on display here for you, Jake, but I will say that culturally, societally, we went from the idea of community and cooperation to ROI and shareholder value and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and dehumanizing each other makes it easier to lie in the ways that I was describing before. So lying is more lucrative than it
Mm-hmm.
has ever been, and the our tendency as a society in the last however many decades to dehumanize one another has made it so that it almost comes naturally to do that because we're focused on the dollar and not the person.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that and this has been written about by social science researchers and so on for decades now, this dehumanization in at least in the culture in the US. And it's subtle and it's tricky and it's nuanced. But I think that has made lying in general, and if it's true in general, it's certainly going to be true in advertising, which, as you mentioned, has a not the most stellar reputation.
Right.
So I think it's a natural byproduct of this dehumanization.
Well, and it's interesting because I think the dehumanization aspect could easily be, I don't know, misplaced or with an aspirational idea. So I'm not dehumanizing people. I'm just telling you that your aspirations are here. Like, like the juicy fruit gum commercials when I was growing up. If you have a piece
Yeah.
of juicy fruit, you know how to water ski. That's what I was thinking. I was like, well, this is pretty amazing that they have this product.
Yeah.
And I mean, I put that together in my child brain,
Right.
but it's a very interesting thing because you're saying we dehumanize one another, and maybe talk a little bit more about how that comes by an innocent way. Like I'm not trying to dehumanize customers. I'm just saying that, boy, they're hard to deal with, and why won't they all just start talking about our product? And the consumer's in control, and a lot of marketers think consumers are stupid. I like, where is this dehumanization coming from, and is there a positive kind of honest way that we come to dehumanize it?
In the world of So I've been involved with product development a lot, and in the
Yeah.
world of product development, one of the things that occurs occasionally is the concept of drift. And drift happens like this. You've got a product that's out there, it's really good. You want to reduce the cost of making the product, so you decontent it a little bit. You take a little bit of the magic fairy dust out of it. And you do that again, and you restage it, and you relaunch it, and you rebrand it. And you compare it to the previous iteration, and you're like, we're just as good. Consumers like it just as much. But where you compare the step 6 back to the original, you've degraded the product significantly.
Right.
And that drift happens not just in the world of product development. It happens culturally. It happens in terms of our value systems, where what was okay now was not okay, seemed okay the previous year. And if you go back up a year at a time, you're like, well, there's no difference year on year. But when you compare 20 years ago to now, you're like, holy cow, what just happened?
Right.
So that drift, that slow drip, 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 I think is what has brought us to where we are right now. So a change from Tuesday to Wednesday doesn't seem significant. But when you stack up 500 Tuesdays, which is 10 years, whatever, then you realize, holy cow, how did we get here?
Right.
And I don't like where we are. But it's the root structure is so deep and complex and broad. How do you undo it? It's a really thorny problem that really smart people are working on, and they're still trying to figure it out. I'm not sure we can.
Well, it dovetails into this next question pretty good. Like I remember getting into marketing, and I remember needing to get reports out, and I remember needing to take a screenshot or like show them the graph of the Google Analytics or whatever platform I'm working on, and tell them what the graph says. And sometime, like in the very beginning, I was like, oh, this isn't good. Like this graph isn't good. And so I was like, well, find a way to make it sound good, or change the top axis of the thing, or zero in on a good part of it. And I realized that a lot of truth is a personal thing. Like it starts at this reporting level, because I'm trying to give you the stuff. I don't want to make you upset. Things are working, but they're working in a different way, and engagement's up, but the volume is down, but it's more worth, and so like I'm trying to save my job. 1, 2, I'm trying to not piss off the shareholders, and so it's a personal approach where I can start packaging it. And when I decided to just give them the straight deal and then have a conversation with what they think it means, and then we could start building on a place to make them better, or find it and fix it, then that became a structural thing. So it took my ability and thought that I needed to kind of couch things and placate them. No, you need to give them the raw deal, tell them what it is, and then work with them on what they think is the place. And if they fire you, then I guess they fire you, but it's not because of you, and you didn't need to keep lying. You just gave them the reality. And so if they want to reject that or do whatever they want, but so do you think trust in advertising is a personal problem, like that could be fixed at a personal level, or is it this structural thing that it has to, the difference in between personal and structural? I mean, wrap on it.
I totally get the question. Going back to something you said though, regarding how you deliver results and conclusions to a client. You probably familiar with the Harry Truman quote. I never really did give them hell. I told them the truth and they thought it was hell.
Oh, hey now.
Well, I may have paraphrased. I didn't get the quote exactly right, but that's the gist of it.
Right.
So I think that trust in advertising is absolutely 100% a personal problem. So I'll dig into that though. We use structural arguments, which you laid out actually really eloquently just now, to justify our individual behavior and choices. Things like, quote, everyone is doing it, or quote, our company culture is to be aggressive with our advertising. But until the robots take over, Jake, it is a human being who ultimately makes the decision to lie to or mislead others for their own personal gain. Personal gain may be keeping my job, shareholder return. You called them all out perfectly in your introduction to this question.
Right.
So I also would say that we can't control, it's very difficult to change a company culture or structure or attitude, or an industry's culture or attitude. But you can control your own behavior. So that's why I say trust in advertising is a personal problem, not a structural problem. It can be changed by all of us doing the right thing. This is what I'm saying. And that's the one thing we can control. I know, heavy, right? Heavy duty.
Well, but I mean, it gets to this point where we just feel like we're along for the ride. You ride the wave, you ride the meme trends, you ride the whatever. Oh, people are loving this now, so we got to do this. Turns out it's April Fools, and we got to have an April Fools post. And it's, chair awareness month. So we got to just talk about chairs, because people are forgetting that chairs exist. And how do we sit on them? And, and you're like, chair awareness? Chair awareness? No. But yeah, chair awareness. That's free. Take that, kids. Take that and run. Because these are gold ideas.
There's a restaurant chain based in Wisconsin called Culver's.
Oh, yes, I know Culver's.
They managed to get the whole nation behind the idea of National Cheese Curd Day. So there you go.
Anyway. It wasn't a thing before they invented it.
Right, exactly.
Oh, but that's that's the good stuff, like creating a moment and a movement.
Yes.
That's great. Right. Reacting to the trend, like the trends, and just being washed up in it, being like, we have to do it. Everyone's doing it. You're like, well, could you do it?
But we need to differentiate between the stuff that is uplifting and the stuff that is deleterious, though. And we don't necessarily do a good job, because both of those things might have a positive economic impact. And I think we need to reject the stuff that's good in terms of money, but bad for people, from the things that are good for money and good for people. So,
Oh
yeah.
man, it's
Anyway,
just so
I know.
so brilliant. No. I think it's so good because I know I a part of the Marketing Accountability Council. It's something that got started by my friend Jay Mandel, and it was people who are feeling these feelings but not having a
Mhm.
place where they can talk about it. Because if you say you are wondering about, the way we're engaging the marketplace and consumers and those things, and you can't tell your shareholders or the holding companies or your agencies, you can't tell them that because we're on the road,
Mhm.
we're like we're headed to the green pastures. Like, don't ruin this
Mhm.
Oz moment for us, but everyone is
Right.
feeling these feelings. And what I love
Mhm.
about you is have zeroed in on a place where there is not a lot of people talking about truth in advertising. No, like I think like
Yeah.
you have done good marketing here by saying, "Oh, there's open ocean here, friends." There is
Food
a
and water. You
ton
got it.
of
Yeah.
wonderful things and expansive places to take this, but I need you to personally take responsibility for this and say, "Are we being truthful? Is this
Mhm.
truthful?" I mean, let's just really give me talk real quick before I go to the next question. Truth, like, is that a movable goalpost?
Well, what I tell my clients is that, our goal should be to tell the truth or a reasonable approximation thereof.
Hmm.
So I don't think truth has hard, sharp lines around it. I think it's got
Mm.
fuzzy edges, but where's the place it clearly ends. And there's
Right.
no doubt about it. The sand slopes gently into the ocean, right? And the waves, there's high tide and low tide, and it laps up. So the edges of the sand aren't well defined. That's kind of like truth. But at some point, I'm all the way out in the water or I'm all the way on land. And when you're in each of those things. So I claim that people know when they're definitely telling the truth, when they're definitely lying. There's certainly a transition between those two states. And I don't pick nits if somebody is in that gray zone necessarily, as long as we're not clearly and intentionally, by the way, and knowingly lying.
And so it brings to mind P.T. Barnum. There's a great book called "Why the Peddler Sings" by Paul Feldwick, and it was all about just like how advertising needs to be more entertainment. Like, this person
Mhm.
showed up, the peddler, with a pack full of things into the ancient village, and they would
Mhm.
sing on their way in.
Right. Yes.
And so they have the same pots and pans and pitchforks, that you could buy from any other peddler, but this
Yep.
one sings. And so there was something about like, oh, that's kind of nice. And P.T. Barnum would show up and he would get people pumped about this thing. And there was something that was innate in the transaction where I have George Washington's wet nurse here. I have a Fiji mermaid,
Yeah.
here.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
have these things, and people were glad to pay, and
Yes.
they knew it was fake. Like,
Mhm.
there's also this kind of thing, like like no one wants to get lied to, but everybody
Mhm.
likes to be in on a joke or in on a bluff or something like that. Like, and you said you weren't nitpicking, and I appreciate that. But is there a place where maybe people are knowingly engaging with advertising as it is this fake thing? It's airsats living. It isn't real, but I am okay with it. Like, as an advertising professional, you learn that, like, oh man, these ads are great. And I love them because they're weird and they
Mhm.
are telling something true in a fun way. Red Bull does not give you wings. It tastes like
Yep.
shit if you really think about it. But
Right.
but
Yep.
people, just because there's this idea that it'll give you wings, is that a non-truth? Is that sort of like in on the con? And do people kind of willingly participate with kind of tongue-in-cheek truth?
I think it's the difference between artistic expression that's intended to generate a feeling, emotion, sense of connection, and explicitly lying for the purpose of manipulation.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is, you said it. We're Anything that we're willing to do is okay. And anything that requires some sort of charade to get us to do something we wouldn't willingly do otherwise, that's the problem. So,
And that's a
I
firm
think,
line.
yes, it is absolutely a firm line, and we all have it. When are we in on it versus when are we somebody pulling the strings?
Yeah,
So,
pulling us into it.
one of the I use a movie clip without paying for it, by the way.
Oh, here
But
he goes.
I'm sorry, but I do acknowledge it. There's a scene in Elf, the movie with
The world's
Will
best
Ferrell.
cup of coffee, I would assume.
Exactly. So he walks and goes, "You did it! World's best cup of coffee. World's best cup of coffee. Congratulations, everybody."
Yeah.
We know that that's not true, and we're all okay with it.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. The whole Red Bull with wings. There's all kinds of stuff like that. It's artistic expression. We agree. We step into the fantasy willingly
Yeah.
to do that. Willingly, it might be conscious, it might be subconscious, but we're okay going there. But nobody wants to be pushed.
Yes, and shoved.
Yes.
And
Right.
yeah,
and that's lying.
And that's lying.
Right, yeah.
Yes. Well,
Right.
so
You got it,
it's
brother.
so great. I love drawing those things because a lot of people are like, well, we're not really telling the truth. No, you're having fun. And if you
Yes.
base it in truth, then you can have infinite amounts of fun and expression. And those are the
Yes.
things. Get people excited about this thing. So not dogging the work. I want people to continue to find creative ways to express these things, but base it in truth. And you're personally responsible at the reporting level for the things that you're building up, because your corporate management structures, they are paid to not think about things. They hire people to think about things for them. So in a way, we are bubbling up the, C-suite's approach to loose approximations of truth from our work. And it isn't coming down to us. Like, we're telling them how to behave and work. And we're telling them that NPS and ROI, and all these other metrics are the true measures of success, And so in a way, if you want to stop this crazy thing, Jane, that we're stuck on, you got to start figuring out what you can do, how you can put your foot down on the ground, slow it down, gain some sense. God darn it, why are you great? Well, so here's my question. Talk to us about you. Give us a story. How does this work with your clients? Give us a Cinderella story of, creating trust in their work and organizations. And then also if you have one, a horror story, because those are great.
Of course, given that I have clients, I can't name names, right?
Please don't name names. Please don't do it, Tom. It's not worth it.
So, quick preamble though, before I get into that, is I want to say this, and I'm thankful for this every day. There are a lot of advertisers who want to tell the truth, and they come to me and they ask me for a variety of things. And there are some, I've been fired a couple of times because I'm hung up on this truth thing, and they're hung up on the competition thing.
Right.
And the truth is it's an okay casualty of competition in their world. So you can imagine that my horror story is from one of those instances where I was fired. So let me tell you, so that you can understand the stories better, what clients generally ask me to do.
Yeah.
Real quickly, I'm a statistician by training.
Mm-hmm.
And if an advertising statement is objectively provable, for example, cleans 20% faster, the advertiser is expected to have quantitative data to support that statement. That's called advertising claim substantiation, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And in my realm, we use that word a lot. And you can imagine where there's quantitative data, there are statisticians, right? So that's why I get involved. And it's typically there are a lot of things, like I said, that I do, but the two things I do most often, one is accounting for uncertainty. You can think like margin of error in a political poll.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's suppose that we're collecting data for an ad claim.
Mm-hmm.
And our product does X and the competitor's product does Y, and we take X divided by Y to calculate, the performance advantage for our product, the X
Sure.
product.
Yeah.
And I've been in verbal sparring matches with the CMO or the CEO or the head of North America marketing, debating whether or not, if that ratio says that we've got a 30% performance advantage, but after applying the margin of error, it's 20%, we debate the relative value of each
Of
of those
30
things,
versus 20.
This is 20, right? Yes. Well, because 30 scored in somebody did an ad test, and 30% scored with consumers, 20% not so much, right?
Right.
And so we sit here and we debate this, and you would be surprised. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised, and this is the success story. How often the marketer capitulates and agrees that we're going to use the lower number. We'll figure out a way to make it work. And the CEO or the CMO or the head of North America marketing sits there and listens to the reasoned arguments by, it's almost always a lawyer and myself sitting in the middle, sort of brokering the deal between marketing and
right.
for lack of a better way to say it.
Yeah.
And the risk almost always wins out. The reduction in risk almost always wins out in these companies that have integrity. And I have found it really refreshing that the folks who are advocating for this, let's say, under promising and over delivering, ends up being what really companies with a conscience want to do.
Right.
Because, by the way, 30% is actually probably the more likely outcome. But we say 20 because then more people are going to experience what we're describing, and we're over delivering. We're under promising and over delivering, and I think that's a great thing. And they see that too. And again, that goes back to the whole, you want to build an enduring brand. You got to create delight. And one of the ways you create delight is to tell people it's going to do 4, and then you deliver 5, and they're like, holy crap. So why wouldn't you do that? Right?
Why wouldn't you go low? But so you were saying the two things you do are accounting for uncertainty, like this margin error things. And what's the other thing?
The other one is assessing the strength of the connection between the measurement of whatever this performance advantage is and what the message actually comes out to be. So, and I will give you an example. If a lab test shows, I'm going to go back to the cleaning example I used earlier about 20%. If a lab test shows that a cleaning product works, let's say 20% faster than the leading competitor on, say, kitchen soil, then the claim shouldn't be cleans 20% faster. The claim should be cleans kitchen soil 20% faster.
Right.
And so the lawyers and the legal precedent around all this kind of stuff, they would articulate it this way: claims should be narrowly drawn. So that connection between the measurement and the message, I'm frequently asked to assess how strong I believe that connection is. I gave you a very simple example.
Right.
If you only test on kitchen soil, your claim should probably say kitchen soil in it, not just soil in general. It's not very sexy, but it's really important because a lot of times when claims get in trouble, it's because of a weak connection between the measurement and what happens in the message.
Wow.
So here's the horror story. I was involved in an industry that will not be named. I went out to their corporate offices and we were debating this very issue. The testing was very limited, but the claim was very broad. And this is unbelievable. I ended up in a meeting in a conference room with my client and their chief competitor. And they were essentially talking about how let's all agree to do this limited testing but make broad claims. And we'll all it felt like collusion, Jake, to be honest.
Right.
They were basically saying, I'll lie if you'll lie.
Right.
So you can imagine that I was asked for no follow-up activities with these people.
No.
After that debacle. And yeah, it was It was ugly. They played fast and loose with the statistics as well, so there was the double whammy there. But
Yeah,
the
no,
fact that they would be in a room with their competitors and all agreeing to like, well, here's how we do it.
well, I mean, and it's interesting because a lot of people watched Scarface, and they were like, "Is that a business model?"
Right?
You're
Yeah.
like,
No,
well, I mean,
really,
it's one way to make money. I wouldn't say it's the way,
right,
And they're like,
yeah.
well, we could be a cartel. And
Right.
what's interesting is we're cartel like in the way we're okay. Some people, not everybody. I think the majority of people who are consumers, because also one of the things that I think is a big mishap is that marketers and advertisers forget that they also go to Target, that they also have, they don't get Starbucks, but they also have Folgers, and sometimes they'll have hotel coffee. And so thinking that you're going to get loyalists is silly because you're not diehard loyal. It's like if the Nikes look good or the Adidas look good, or if I have track pants from Puma, I'm not going to wear all Puma. It's like we forget that we're consumers too. And so you don't like to be lied to. But when you're at this top level, it's almost like the cartel approach to not fixing prices, but fixing truth. And man, that sounds messed up.
Know.
But also, hey, if you're paying me six figures, sure, 20. 21, I don't know.
Hey, I'm not 21. How about 22?
Hey, okay.
Yeah,
Do I hear 23? And then the next thing you know, you're like, okay, 40, 45. It's 100%. Anything over 100%, it's like 800%. You're like, where's the bottom? What's the top? What's happening here?
Yeah,
1,000% increase? What are you talking about?
Funny how that all works.
Yeah, but talking to a statistician, I love that because you are very interesting people. Like I live in the world of music and creativity and so I love to find those things, but my most exciting briefs and executions came from dope quantitative stats that showed you something hard, a number that you could base it off of. And then if you have qualitative things around that, boy, you just have something juicy because you can be as amazing as you want. But if you're coming from a place that's anchored in truth, the sky's the limit because that's where creativity comes. But a lot of people are using creativity to sort of like kind of fix truth, in a way, which is just garbage.
I heard it described this way once, that data and statistics and truth, that's like the lighting on the set. Yes. And then whatever that lighting is, go ahead and make your movie, make your play. But the lighting on the set is what's created by truth and reality, let's say. And you have to, so you can't alter that, right? That's what you have to deal with. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway.
Man, so no, not anyway, always. This is such an important conversation because it can start with you. This isn't something that you're waiting for a savior, a Gandalf-like creature to come from the east when the sun rises. They will bring the truth. No, it starts with you just at the reporting level, just at a meeting level, one-on-one, just at the radical candor that you can share with your people saying, I have these feelings about this. You can start building truth because it's a consensus. It isn't this thing that lives in a vacuum. There is no, observation-free view from nowhere. We're all bringing our subjectivity to it, but that's the power. And if you can stand on that, that's what you should do. And you've talked about so many amazing things. I mean, the culture, that is spurning the society, that's creating the private sector behaviors, like, how laziness, greed, and short-term thinking. I mean, all of this, the facts that lying is illegal. You're like, oh wait, say more about that. But if you had to condense all of this into like a bumper sticker that you could put on the car of advertising, what's your one piece of advice on bringing more truth to advertising?
You may or may not appreciate that I have three answers to the one piece of advice.
It's a long bumper sticker. It wraps around the car.
Well,
fine.
No, each has a different tone. So whatever your approach to life is, I've got a tone for you.
Do it.
One is the idealistic tone. Advertisers, in my opinion, should meditate on the golden rule. And you mentioned this just like 2 minutes ago, Jake, and put themselves in the shoes of the consumer when thinking about their messaging. It's not that difficult, right?
Mhm.
They're consumers themselves. You said it.
Right.
But I think business objectives cause us to lose contact with our own humanity at times. I'll repeat what you and I have been saying for the last 35 minutes. Nobody likes to be lied to.
Right.
Okay, that's the idealistic, is that, the golden rule, do unto others. The political response is, and this is the only potentially controversial thing I'll say today. In the
Yeah.
public and commercial realms, the most effective and perhaps only way to counteract human frailty, greed, laziness, predation, ego, graft, etc., and the natural tendency for leverage to cluster at one end of the distribution is through regulation.
Hmm.
As we said before, there's currently too much upside to being a liar, so we need to make it harder on those entities who tend to lie.
Right.
I don't know if we have the political will these days to go there. It became a dirty word 40 years ago.
Uh-huh.
I wish we had used the word protection instead,
Yeah,
but
sure.
regulation is one way to go about it. But here's the realistic answer to bringing truth to advertising. There are a number of people, and I include you on this list, passionate, brilliant, capable people who are shining a light on the bad actors. And we've got, let's use this platform that people use to lie. Let's use these platforms to also, social media and so on, to shine the light on it. And
Hmm.
consumers would benefit if there was more of this. And in general, I think the world would benefit from a larger number of evangelists for the truth. Maybe truth in advertising should be a college major or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But and so the reason I say number 3 is realistic is that, and this has been a theme across our conversation this morning, is what you can do as an individual is controllable, and that's where it should start,
Mm. Oh my
in my
gosh.
opinion. But I
No-
mean, I would love to see, like, this is the ethical attitude we all take, that's that idealistic answer. I'd love to see if we had the political will to say, we're not gonna allow people to be victimized. It's debatable whether we can do that given our current political climate and the way candidates are, elected.
Right.
But realistically, you can starts with you,
Yeah.
funny.
It,
It's
it
said so many times in so many contexts, but it's true.
and I mean, yeah, and it's not a it depends thing. Like that's what you have to do. Like you have
Yeah.
to say, no, this isn't like, well, of course, one of the things is shrinkflation. Like, an
Yeah.
advertising agency gets a brief for, potato chips and they made the bag 7% smaller. How can you
Yeah.
get people pumped on paying the same for getting less? And a lot of advertising agencies are slobbering. They're like, oh, yeah, totally. It could be a convenience thing or it could be no,
Yeah, right.
you could just say, I'm not going to help you steal my potato chips from me. And like
Right.
it starts with
Yes.
you, but saying no to money is one of the big things. And you just got to say, hey, if you want to make an honest buck, you're going to
Yep.
die with a little lighter consciousness. Or you can make a whole bunch of greedy things, short-term run thinking, evasive communication, and then you're going to have to answer for it eventually. The receipts will come out. The statisticians have told me that 100% of us are going to die. So you better figure that out now while you're living. But you have people like Tom, who you can connect with and learn more about these things. If people are interested in connecting with you and learning more, how can they do that online, Tom?
Well, as you said at the top of our conversation, I do a bunch of nerdy things in addition to the truth in advertising stuff, like survey research and statistical analysis and complex data manipulation. And I speak about math and statistics and research. All of my business is through referrals, so I don't have a website. So the best way to track me down is through my LinkedIn profile. And it includes a couple of one-pagers that describe my consultancy and my contact information, blah, blah, blah. So LinkedIn is kind of my tribe. That's my community.
Cheese or chocolate?
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Cheese or chocolate?
Chocolate,
Hair metal or grunge?
hair metal.
They're having fun. Socks with sandals, yay or nay?
Hard nay.
Am I talking to my soulmate? Oh my God. Okay, here we go. What?
I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so I think my answers are probably pretty predictable. But keep
Yes. Well, so then there you go. Fuzzy math or fuzzy blankets?
going. Fuzzy math.
You're into it. Pivot tables or picnic tables?
You'll be surprised by this answer. Picnic tables, 100%.
He wants to be outside. You know?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, and finally, save the best for last or another Vanessa Williams song.
Save the best for last.
Does she have another song?
I don't know.
I think she might. Oh, Vanessa, if you're listening, we love you.
We love you. Absolutely. Yes. Total respect.
Total respect.
Having fun at your expense. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
What Gets Measured is a Ninja Cat podcast. Please rate and review the show wherever you find your podcasts. Share this episode on social and visit us on the web at ninjacat.io.